roundtables that we've had going on the past week, but if you weren't able to come, this is Tripp and Ben Muldrow with Arnett Muldrow, and they are the consultants that we've been working with for this branding. So they're going to be presenting their initial concepts today.
And thank you guys. Obviously,
yeah,
a lot of you all took time out of your days yesterday, the day before, today. Through it, and we want to thank you, the Town Center Committee in particular, and staff as well that's here, and other folks as well. A lot of effort, but these guys are the ones who really worked the most in the past 72 hours. I think you're going to be floored with the amount of material they've come up with. I hope they've expressed to us their energy and enthusiasm and appreciation for being here and show off in the work that they've done so far. This is not the final step, and we'll want to make sure folks understand this. And I'll let you guys talk about your process on that, but there is a follow-up to this, and ideally it is a first taste and certainly not the end of the conversation.
Thank you so much. I want to echo what Marley and Chris said. It's just a real pleasure to be here. I want to thank the Town Center Committee for being kind of our directors through this process, and then all of you participated in the roundtables. It is an intensive process. Ben was up late and then up early doing the graphic work on this. And it is at a phase where we have a lot to share with you. And we'll talk through it. For those of you who know people who could not make it, it's being recorded here. So what we'll do is we'll go through the presentation, and then if you have questions, we'll open it up for questions at the end. That way we can allow for folks who see it later on to have the presentation in whole. The process has been one that it began with a survey that opened several weeks ago. When we got here, there were 192 respondents. It's up to 242 now, as of about 45 minutes ago. Still some important takeaways in the survey. The vast majority of respondents are residents or work here or own businesses here. It's about 85 to 90%. Really, they're either working here, they live here, or they own a business here. Or both. There is an overwhelming positivity about Troutdale being a good place to live. It is far and away the thing that people point out the most as what they like about this place. When we dig deeper, some of the words that start to come to mind are charming and quaint and friendly and welcoming. Those are the things that really come to mind. The attributes that people talk about are the scenery, the natural environment, the downtown, the history, and then the businesses and the artistic community here as well. When we start moving to what people want to see and some of the things that are a bit more of the, gosh, we wish we had this, was number one thing, particularly in downtown, is more variety of shopping. And that was kind of the far and away biggest piece. Additional restaurants was kind of the single request, family friendly specifically, that people identified as well. As far as the images and the tagline and some of the things that we asked about the branding, there's very strong sentiment toward Gateway to the Gorge. And so one of the things that Ben and I will talk about today is how we deal with a legacy identity like that. And that's something that's important. And then there's certainly identification with the gorge itself and the Sandy River and the relationship between city and nature. And so that'll bear it out through this. And the current image that's being used is this logo. This is the color version, and it is an image of the sculpture that's in the Mayor's Park, and it does have the water and the gorge in the background. It's got the date of the founding of the city. And then we also see it occur, it happens a lot in black and white or solid color. All the city cards are a red version of the logo. And then there's an older version as well. And then there's kind of a version that's a mashup of both of these that happens at gateway signs. It has the shape of the old logo with the trout in the middle. And so this is kind of what we are inheriting. We heard a lot of feedback on the input that from the city employee standpoint, there isn't necessarily consistency across the board on how the city deploys and uses this seal. There is no popular logo, and that's one of the main tasks that we were identified as providing is, what do we do to kind of communicate to the community? This is often what's used in official communication. And so this is kind of what we're inheriting. I'm sure you probably want to add some things, some comments.
Yeah, I think the thing to know is you've got a seal, but you've never had a logo. You've never had a system. You've never had the components that allow you to actually be consistent. So it's kind of like we've had a graphic image, but then we've had forced invention by desperation. And that's why there is so many different things that kind of happen. That's very typical. That's typically the way that communities work. And just to kind of point out, with the seal that you are using now, I think one of the things that I always try to communicate about is when we're trying to communicate who we are, look at how big the name Troutdale is in comparison to the composition of the whole seal. So it's roughly 1/10 the height of the tool. So you can tell even from its creation that its job is not to actually inform someone who you are. It's more of kind of it's based off of heraldry and crests and family cantons. And that's where that kind of origination of the city seals and city crests came from. So we want to honor some of those things that you all have done, but we heard some great comments. Trip was very gracious to refer to this as the gorge. We heard a couple folks say it looked like Beggar's Canyon. If you're a Star Wars fan, it's not necessarily the green lush that we hear people talk about. So where do we go from here? And the elements that I always like to start with is I really like to start with colors. I think the colors are great tools to connect. So that's where I always start. Now, a little caveat, you can never really tell whether the colors I picked will look like the colors on a projected screen, but they'll be relatively close. For you all, I selected a slightly larger palette than I typically do. I typically try to keep it into about 3 or 4 colors. With you all, there were some things that were really sticking out over and over again. So what you actually have is you have 8 overall colors in the system. You've got kind of a rich bluish gray that was derived directly out of the stone wall of the old highway. You've got a kind of bronze golden brown pulled right out of a statue. You've got a couple different tones of greens. You literally have kind of a turquoisey teal pulled directly out of the paint of your bridge. And then we also have colors that were literally pulled out of the colors of rainbow trout. So you've got all these different things that actually the colors are derived from your place. So you can get to an argument of, I don't like that or I don't like that. I can be honest, I don't use a kind of pale blush pink in branding systems very often. But when you have a reason for it to exist, then all of a sudden it makes sense. Now, for those of you that might be codes enforcement or street crew, I'm smart enough to know that we're not going to be putting a lot of pink logos on city vehicles, right? But it's a part of the system to allow us to communicate to the greater whole. Now, as far as where do we go next, one of the big things that we talked about was typeface. And we talked about how, hey, if I don't have the room to put a complicated seal on a jacket, how can I assure continuity every time we see Troutdale? So what we did is we actually selected 4 different typefaces. I did something I've never done before. I actually selected a typeface just for the arts community. There's so many different initiatives going on that are related to arts and coordination and capacity building around the arts. I wanted to give them a visual tie together. And if you have ever tried to help artists design things in any kind of continuous nature, not the easiest thing because they're all artists, right? I always try to remind people there's a reason why gallery walls are white, so the art can shine off of the wall. Like, this gives us a connective tissue that's kind of a low commitment level so that each one of those arts initiatives can kind of do their thing. But if we start at the top, we picked a nice, bold, sans serif typeface. Troutdale looks really good. You got a lot of letters in your name. So we wanted to have something that was a little narrower in its letters so that we could get a good height. The secondary is a very, very traditional serif typeface that was actually inspired directly off of some of the old marketing that we saw for the Columbia Gorge Highway. So it kind of ties into some of that. And then with this accent typeface, we have a very contemporary, very thick, very meaty sans serif that just allows us to communicate in smaller places.
But each one of these is really designed to be both harkening back to the history of the community, but timeless as well. None of these are trendy typefaces that are going to fall out of fashion in 5 years, 10 years. We want something that's got a shelf life that can really last.
And then from there, just to kind of show you that this is what Troutdale looks like in that typeface. One of the unique things that I really liked about it was it does something a little odd with the T's, with having the slants to the top instead of the slants to the bottom. And since you have 2 T's in your name, it allows you through a simple type selection to create a certain visual continuity without having to go over the top or make something overly flowery to make it connect. So you see that basis of color connection, and then you see the basis of type connection. But then from there, it really leads us into the message. What's the story that we want to tell, and how do we connect those dots? And with that, what we like to do is write what we call a brand statement. And Trip's going to read that for you now.
So the brand statement, one of the things we really appreciate is whenever the town center committee meets, you pull out the mission statement of the committee and what it's after. And certainly a mission statement tries to accomplish something by sort of saying where you're heading and what you're after on this. When we do a brand statement or a position statement, really we're trying to fire on several cylinders here. We're trying to create a narrative for the community that is a mirror to the people who live here about what the community values. And we're also trying to create a tool that can be used effectively to market the community. And so for those of you on Town Center who were here when I was here in November, you saw how Wenatchee took what I'm about to read and turned it into a video. We've seen other communities put this on their webpage. We've seen other communities use this in ad copy or use it as introduction to annual report. There's a community that we know of that gives, when they do a citation or a celebration of a citizen, they actually frame the statement with a beautiful picture and present it to the recipient. And so that's what we hope to, we hope to inspire you with this. Just keep in mind that as I read it, I'm going to try and do it in my radio voice, but I will not be able to do a Pacific Northwest accent. I couldn't shed the twang. So that will still be there. And then the other thing we're doing is we're starting to give you a little hint at some of the imagery in here too. Shaped by powerful forces of wind, water, and land. It is here that the Sandy River carries rushing water from the glaciers of Mount Hood to the mighty Columbia. It is here where flood and fire form Broughton Bluff, standing sentinel as a stunning backdrop to our downtown. It is here that land rich with flora and fauna sustained Native Americans, early settlers, and a growing region. We're rooted in history. It's here that the Chinook hunted and fished the lands along the rivers and mountains. It is here that explorers like Vancouver, Lewis, and Clark charted a path for European settlement in the region. It is here where enterprising businesses launched to serve a growing region with food, timber, wool, and hides. It's here where aluminum provides is here that character is preserved in museums. We're transported over time. The Union Pacific Railroad crossed our continent, and the station here gave birth to a town of commerce and industry. Decades later, the Columbia River Highway, the first scenic highway in the nation, brought cars through Troutdale to explore the iconic wonders of the Columbia River Gorge. Troutdale is a place where the movement of people and goods is. We're connected in dramatic ways. To our west is the metropolis of Portland, a city that embodies the urban dynamics of the Pacific Northwest. Our east is the Gorge, a stunning reminder that this place is a product of natural forces far stronger than our own, forces we can feel as the wind blows. Our exceptional role as the transition. We're grounded in community. We preserve and enhance our historic downtown. Embrace our natural setting. We envision a future that honors our past. We cherish our role as the gateway to the gorge. But we're more place than passage. We're a place of gatherings, a place of creativity. I invite you to experience our place, feel the warmth of our people, and the power of our surroundings. We are travelers. Our nature will move you.
So what you see there is you really see the ability with this kind of 5-paragraph narrative to hit on all of those components, all of those values and things that we heard from the citizens that they love about the place that they call home. And we see that kind of come together into a system that we've created a series of icons that hit back onto some of those elements that you might be tempted to try to shove into a consolidated logo just because they are so very visual, but ones that you can use to really help highlight those values that you have. The system itself, when we present it, we create it in a way that's modular so that we can have different variations. One of the things that we really wanted to make sure that we did was this Gateway to the Gorge message should never go away. You will always be that. That might not be the only message that you need, but that is a very, very strong message, especially a message to travelers who are traveling from the west to the east. We want to really position that and kind of lock that up as your moniker. That's the thing that never changes. It's not a tool that's out for discussion. It's one of those steadfast messages that you will always have. But then with that, we want to introduce this new tagline, our nature will move you. That line, it talks about everything from our small town feel to the stunning outdoors that we are that gateway to.
And we didn't want to be overly clever. I mean, we wanted the nature to imply both natural environment, but also the disposition of the community. Because we kept hearing over and over again that the disposition of the community is warm and welcoming. And we want that to be that kind of feel that people get. So there is a double entendre, but we didn't want to be overly tricky about it.
And the other thing that you'll notice here is we talked a lot about knowing that this initiative was born out of the Town Center Committee, but also realizing that the term downtown might not necessarily be the most strategic term for us to use. Not sure whether you've picked up on this or not, but sometimes people aren't always quick to automatically have the same idea of what a downtown might be. We've worked in communities similar to yours, where people have actually thought that a development like the Outlets was a community's downtown. So this idea of historic, that is an identity that is much harder to confuse. If you have only seen our community's truck stops, you probably haven't seen historic Troutdale. It gives you that litmus test from against which a visitor can kind of, not just a visitor, a resident, can measure what they think they know of Troutdale versus all of the Troutdale stories. So it's a very simple tactic, but using that historic Troutdale simply allows us to say, hey, there's a pretty broad picture, and make sure that you're getting that full story. Now, from this, we created a series of art and images that kind of reinforce the style, being able to kind of fall into that WPA period and kind of fit in line with the look and feel. Like we said, the gateway to the gorge is a message that's going to stick around forever. You can see with this, originally we created a badge. The badge shape was inspired by the arch. We heard a lot of comments about the arch, so we wanted to get a subtle gesture and kind of nod to that arch, but it can stand on its own. It can be in a dark background arch. A badge. It can be in a light badge, and it can even operate in a simplified function in one color and in reverse. And then you can start to see, once you have those different tools, you can do different things. It's not about having to force yourself to look exactly the same way every time. It's about having the right voice and tone at the right time for the right message. Now, where it starts to get fun, though, is this really is what we consider to be the communities. This is the kind of thing that event organizers, businesses in the community, as well as the government, all have access to help tell the story of Troutdale. But when we start to look at our organizations, we need to make sure that they also have those similar tools. So we did want to give a quick look at that seal. And what we actually did is we did a redesign that was based off of those elements. One of the things that I really liked about the previous seal was I thought it did a really great job attempting to represent the bluff. So integrating in the walls of the highway, the bridge, the bluff, the river, the outdoors and the gorge. This gives you that opportunity to start to address some of those organizational complexities that we heard about in our staff meetings. How do we address different departments? How do we address the difference between departments that maybe are a little bit more positive customer side versus a little bit more on the enforcement side? So as you can see, things like public works, parks, we're doing kind of a nice clean variation. Where code enforcement, we're actually doing something a little bit more formalized, one color, a little bit more of a one color badge feel. So it carries with it more uniformity and more official nature to help reinforce the authority that those interactions have. So this is starting to show where those elements can really work in duality between the place and the organization, but also still keep a little bit of a gap between the two. Now, one of the big things we heard about was email signatures. You can start to see, even with simple gestures like this, once you have landed on typeface and you've landed on a color system, you can start to create a uniform approach to even the professional communication of your email signatures. Now, from here, this next one is, it's not typical that we design logos for organizations that don't exist yet. But we decided to do that here, because why not, right? With the Town Center Committee, I think one of the things that we really feel like we see is an opportunity for this community to take advantage.
And we've heard you say.
Right, we've heard the community say it, this idea of we would like to take advantage of the Main Street model. We'd like to take advantage of this four-point approach to revitalization and economy building and be able to take the product that the Town Center Committee creates and use that to truly have a grassroots economic development engine helping to fuel the revitalization and continued rebirth and reimagining of our downtown. So we played around with a couple things. I think one of the first questions you always ask with that is, do you call it Main Street or do you not? It opens up a huge can of worms in some communities because people think they're very literal and they're like, oh, well, this organization only helps one street. So here, knowing that you have done so much talking about Town Center, what we're actually recommending is the Town Center Alliance. We wanted to create something that was far more contemporary. The idea of calling an alliance really focuses the identity of this organization about being an organization instead of the identity simply promoting the place. You can see the icon is both a stylized T and a fish. It is many components that are interwoven and coming together to create a singular piece, a singular thing. And really, with the design, you can see that that overwhelming name is Alliance. With any formality, chances are people are just going to refer to it as the Alliance. Now, that being said, if we decide Town Center is not the right way to go with it, the nice thing about this is it could turn to Troutdale Alliance like that. You know, so being able to kind of think that through, but knowing that there have been conversations about using the Town Center plan to fuel a Main Street-based organization, we felt like it made sense for us to show how a new organization might fit into the branding system. Does that work? Okay, so here, now that we've seen kind of the destination brand and we've seen how it works with organizations, then we get into the brand extension. This is where the system really starts to grow legs. So what we started to do is we started to look at all the different events and projects and initiatives, and it only makes sense for us to start with this, the URA, the sexiest name in the Portland Metro. You know, we are unbelievably excited about the potential that this site has for the future of Troutdale. The opportunities are absolutely apparent. Some of the nature of the discussions that we have heard is, I mean, unbelievably exciting. This idea of it needs to be interesting, it needs to be unique, outside the box. We can't approach this like a normal development project. We need to have something that just really takes advantage and does something that people will talk about. And I think all of that talk really inspired Tripp and I. So again, something we don't normally do, he actually wrote another brand statement just for the URA.
But this also reveals a proposed name for it as well. We consider it a working name. And then we also really feel like what this does is kind of launch the marketing angle for the site itself. And so there's some things in here that are kind of preludes as to what is envisioned for the site. In a city steeped in history and positioned at the gateway to the stunning Columbia River Gorge, there's a site that will transform Troutdale in our region. It represents the convergence of history and vision and the unity of nature. Opportunity is here. The vision is bold. Join us as Troutdale transforms a long-neglected site on the Sandy River in the heart of our historic downtown into a dynamic place to live, shop, dine, and stay with a riverfront greenway, striking views, outstanding location, and design innovation unmatched in the region. We invite you to experience the place where our future comes together. Confluence at Troutdale. And this whole idea of confluence is where the Sandy River is the confluence at the Columbia River. It's confluence by definition is where everything comes together. This one site is the one that links downtown to the interstate, to the mall, to the natural amenities of the Sandy River as well. The logo that's been designed is very simple. It's a C, but we heard people talk about the idea of a kinetic sculpture. So you could imagine this being something that, you know, when the wind blows and it's hard to identify this actually could be part of that sculpture as well. This whole idea of a coming together on the site and giving it that kind of marketing angle gets the community and the region excited about the opportunity here, but also starts to define it from a contemporary standpoint, but also a reference of sensitivity to.
And I think the other thing, you know, I think everybody would agree that we could sit there and we could argue a name and should this be the name or should it not be the name. But I think everybody pretty much universally agrees that you would rather it be Confluence than it would be the Columbia Gorge Townhomes. You know, like, you want it to be dynamic, you want it to be multifaceted, and you want it to be a game changer. So being confident and bold in the potential, I think, will help as we move forward towards partnering with the development. So From there, some of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to pay a nod to some of the great graphic identities that already exist. This was the most recent logo for Fall Festival of Arts, and this simply shows how organizations and event organizers can actually take advantage of graphics that they already have and simply adopt some of the typefaces to be able to be part of that system. Typically, the thought put into the typeface selection is less than 3% of the overall design in a lot of the things that go on. So this gives us that opportunity at a very low level of commitment for organizations and event organizers to play along with the community brand. From there, I like to show varying levels. This is the Troutdale Trot logo from this past year. This is a extremely detailed logo. If you actually sit there and take the time to analyze that someone drew vector-based images of all these buildings and water towers and bridges from your community, I didn't want to just go and redesign it. You know, I was like, that's a lot of work. And so what we're showing on the right is we're simply showing a very slight adaptation of adopting the word type, adopting the typefaces, and being able to keep all that hard work in the same place. Now, if you do notice, the logo says the 41st annual. So when it was designed knowing that there would have to be some sort of annual update. I will say this, word of advice moving forward, you don't have to integrate that into your graphic identity. Naming the annual nature of an event is really great in its marketing, but if you can adopt a graphic identity that keeps you from having to change that graphic identity each and every year, you allow for ease of use, ease of purchasing things like banners and signs for the event. So that's a really, really good just lesson to learn, but overall, a ton of great work, and you don't want to just change it for no reason. Then from there, have this great event with First Fridays. So again, seeing how you can integrate some of these different components, bringing in the typefaces and the colors. The next one was Cruise In. Now, let me tell you, there's an entire design subset around designing things for cruise-ins. And if you've never done this kind of work, it is some of the hardest that you'll ever do, because people will be like, why do you have a Mopar car on that shirt? I don't want that shirt. I want a shirt with a Ford on it. Or, like, you used the Chevy last year. What are you going to use this year? So I'm showing a couple different things. The left is the poster from the last event. As you would imagine in the cruise-in world, the poster features a rainbow trout driving a hot rod. That's very typical. Those are the kind of things. Do what? It's not always a trout, right? Those are the kind of things that sell cruise-in merchandise. The posters, the t-shirts, that's exactly where that's for. Being able to create some sort of design continuity would be really important for that. You see here, I just adopted the word type. Now, granted, that is the front end of a Challenger, so you might get some pushback from some Ford guys, but I'm a Mustang guy, and I'm okay with it. But one of the other things that you see below that is, depending on how the event evolves, sometimes they have different focuses. Sometimes they're focused on just American cars. Sometimes they're focused on muscle cars. Sometimes they're focused on classic cars. Not exactly sure what the cruise-in focuses in on, or if it's just any and all. But one name that kind of jumped out to me was the idea of fins on the Sandy, and kind of featuring in that look at some of your late 50s and 60s classic cars. So just being creative with it, but also understanding that in a cruise-in, it's a great example of that difference between the continuous use of a event logo and the need for ever-changing merchandise and promotion. Now, one of the other things we wanted to spend a little bit of time on is we heard so much from the arts community, and this is one of the communities that, because of the visual presence of the arts, when you drive through the community, it is very, very important for you all to be able to take advantage of that passion and use it to push you forward. So we heard some mentions of the Art Trout program. I'm not sure how formal or informal that is yet, but the desire to do a series of art trouts that have different kinds of art applied to them. That's all I know, but it's called Art Trout, so we call it Art Trout. The next recommendation that we have for the community is, again, it's obvious from the arch all the way through to the bridge, you have public art throughout your downtown. One of the things that you all need to consider is what we call a public art master plan. It's great to have art in the public. How can we use investment in public art to help pedestrians make a greater economic impact on our district? Especially as Confluence comes online, especially as the potential of true connectivity from the outlets through Confluence up into downtown, we want to make sure that you all have a long-term public art placement plan that promotes pedestrian connectivity through your trails and through your streets to be able to maximize that economic impact. The third thing is what we're calling sculptural signs.
And this is
a big one.
This is one in response to kind of what, as outside observers, we see when we get into the core of downtown. This is a community that has a tremendous natural environment. You did great work in building the north side of downtown. You've got the opportunity, you've got great restaurants, you have businesses, you want more commercial. The signs and the buildings in downtown are, I'm going to be brutally frank, simply not up to any sort of standard that reflects what the community values are. And you can regulate signs and write sign ordinances until the cows come home. And that does not mean you're going to get quality signs. And so what we're proposing is what we call the Sculptural sign program. And basically that is a sign that would be a projecting sign off the building that pedestrians can see as they're walking down, that is done with the cooperation of sign makers and artists. This program has worked in a community we worked in Iowa, Valley Junction. They actually partnered with the National Sign Museum, local sign makers and artists, and businesses petitioned to have their business have creative signs made for them. And each one was unveiled, and each unveiling was an event. And as the signs accrued, the community wanted to come and see what was happening each time. This whole idea of taking art and incorporating it into the practical nature of administering a district, it changes how you interact with it. And instead of people being defensive about, well, the regulations tell me I can't, we get into what can you do? What are the opportunities? How do those partnerships kind of bear out? And at the end of the day, what we have is a level of quality here, and it may be one sign at a time, but having that transition through that program. And so that's what we're proposing in that particular recommendation.
And then the final recommendation is a very, very simple program that we just call Vibrant Troutdale. And what it really is it is inspired off of a facade component program where building owners might be able to tap into a sign grant or an awning grant or exterior lighting grants. But what this is it really is a small seed grant program to help infuse color and life into your downtown. So it might be outdoor dining, it might be sandwich boards, it might be giant Jenga, it might be anything that creates a little bit of whimsy, a little bit of life, what we call stickability downtown. And it really uses small seed funds to help promote creativity and create a place that people want to be. And you can sit there and you can attempt to tackle the harder issues of the lack of retail mix in your current district, or you can seed small amounts of projects that create reasons that people want to hang around, and then by doing that, the byproduct is foot traffic that drives interest in locating in the district. So instead of kind of attacking the problem that might be seen as a problem, but it's a business owner, you're now fueling the idea of, hey, we want to make our district more fun to be. Smell bells. So, first of all, hearing the stories about the smell, really, really interesting. Hearing the origin of tabs going back to selling smoked smelt from a cart at the end of the bridge, and even going into the 1980s and hearing about when people in Portland would find out that the smelt were running, that 5,000 people a day would come out here to dip for smelt. And I mean, some of the numbers blew my mind. 25 pounds per person limit on the smelt. And then the commercial smelters were going and taking the stuff and they were sending it to SeaWorld as feed fish. Like, absolutely amazing. So the thing I really wanted to illustrate with this is we're talking a lot about trail systems. We're talking a lot about creating outdoor access. In today's world, it's not good enough just to create the access point. You have to create the brand that's going to create the word of mouth. We've got a fantastic rail to trail program in South Carolina that connects Greenville to the neighboring community, Travelers Rest, and it was named after an old spur engine on this textile line, and it's called the Swamp Rabbit. And people, it's a weird name, it's kind of unexpected, but people just fell in love with it. Now we've got an inn, we've got a brewery. They renamed the local hockey team the Swamp Rabbits. So being able to, when you're creating access points, always remember it's not enough to just do the access point. You got to create that talkability. Like, we know word of mouth is the most effective way. Let's create something that people are going to talk about. So it doesn't have to be Smell Bell, but I figured that was
We're not throwing it out there for fun, you know, it's like people
just
say
weird
that.
enough to get you in the right mindset to talk about. So then from there, the final stuff that I want to share with you all is how it makes its way into some of the branding components, the marketing pieces. We had a great conversation with staff about apparel and lack of consistency in the apparel. I think that as the system starts to come together, we're starting to see things that are going to be relatively simple for us to, we don't want to be so regimented that it feels like an army, but I do think that you need to be able to create those banks and give people a general direction to go into. So this is how you might be able to get a jacket. Now, I was so unbelievably clever by putting it on a Columbia jacket. Yeah, I mean, you know, Columbia River Gorge, maybe you want to look at that. But make that relationship and be able to limit those options so you can start to get some visual consistency. I took a chance to look at vehicles and just showing what a quick vehicle package, graphic package might look. Now, with this, you see it's a very, very simple logo application to the door itself, but then it is getting a color bar along the running board that allows you to potentially show difference between a parts maintenance crew versus a public works crew. So that there's an understanding that every single person that's out there is doing work is actually doing different kinds of work. It helps the constituency to really feel this impact of service at work. And being able to see that in a super clean and easy way, but still very, very professional. This next one's really fun. This is what a signage system might look like. Now, signs are really super important. You all have nailed it with things like the arch. Create an entry, an announcement. But you have to pick that conversation up after the welcome. If all you say is hello, but you don't ever tell anybody where the bathroom is, it creates an awkward situation.
Right, and the situation we're having off of the interstate is as you cross the bridge and get up to the historic highway, there's something like 8 signs giving you direction to places. Very sign clutter situation. And so what we found in wayfinding systems is that, in effect, what you're able to do frequently is triple the number of destinations that you've identified at the same number of signs, or in some cases reduce the number of signs and increase the number of destinations that you've identified. And so that's, and these fall under manual uniform traffic control devices. We try and give templates on, that fall within the ODOT, guidelines, and we've done this in states all over the country, and, you're not allowed to have more than 3 destinations on a sign. The cap heights have to be a certain cap height, the letters have to be reflective, and it gives room for decorative, space, and then room for the informational space. As for the interstate itself, these signs are not allowed on the interstate. That's a whole other ballgame there. But we do think this is something that's worth exploring over time in Troutdale to curate the visitor experience, because as of this moment, you have signs directing people to places, but there's no consistency as to how that direction happens. And so that's something we see as a possibility here.
And I want to use this to just point out a couple kind of observations that I think are important to file away moving ahead. First of all, one of the big questions you always ask about is materials, especially with gateway type signage. What kind of materials are appropriate? And for some reason, oftentimes the sign designer that you might work with doesn't really look at what's already in the community. I highly recommend that any kind of monument style bases that you have to install, I feel like they should be inspired from the stone of the highway walls, the historic highway walls. So a dark stone base. It doesn't make sense for you to go to a more contemporary stacked stone, or it doesn't make sense for you to go to a plaster or a stucco or even a brick. I mean, it just makes sense. That's the story that you were telling. Typically, on this slide, I'll show street banners. I have this weird feeling, based off all the stories about wind that we heard about here, that traditional street banners on your poles might be a really, really scary proposition. So what I actually showed on here was I showed more of an approach of a laser cut, permanent installed metal type, not really a banner, but an installation. I know that you already have some of the trout kind of brackets down there already, so it just kind of goes off of that. I feel like you kind of knew that, so it's like you don't want to spend a lot of money on banners that are going to get ripped off, or banners that are going to pull down poles. Again, keeping it nice and simple, keeping it clean, and it is okay to re-announce arrival. I think a lot of times communities are prone to put a gateway sign in their corporate limits and then think that the welcoming has been done. It is okay to welcome numerous times, especially if you know that people are having to make several different decision points before they find the destination you're looking for. Let's see. Is that everything for that? Yeah. So then from there, just again, showing merchandise. I put this up here for a specific reason. There's an idea a lot of times when you do branded merchandise that the assumption is the consumer has no value for it. Like, why would somebody want a Troutdale water bottle? So you start by saying, I'm going to find the cheapest water bottle I can find. And then that's what I'm going to create. This is a hydro flask. Hydro flasks are very, very popular. I have 5 children. They all ask for hydro flasks for Christmas. It's kind of crazy. And what you're doing is when you apply your brand onto a brand that already carries a certain brand equity, you're transferring the value from the known brand to yours. So it allows you to kind of give yourself a boost. And I mean, we know a lot about that with outlets. Outlet uses brand recognition. There are certain tenants that are the flagship that they use to build the value set for what you're going to experience. We're kind of doing the same thing here. We're deciding some of those brands that align with the values and the access points that we're giving. So outdoor recreation is key.
And I want to be careful to clarify when Ben talks about you, what he's meaning is not the city per se and not the Main Street per se. What we could envision with products like this is that they're licensed to be created by local merchants and sold in conjunction or by local merchants. And so imagine, if you will, that this flask is available in a store, and it may have the store's brand on the back, or it's a coffee mug that it has the coffee shop's identity on the back, or it's a beer glass that has the pub's piece on the back. So part of why we try and create these popular brands is not so that the city or the Main Street is in the merchandising business, but that the business community can be a part of the identity of the community as well. And that simple licensing agreement just gives a way for those merchants and businesses to, and the community to understand, oh yeah, do you want those t-shirts? I know that so-and-so just did some of those down there. You might be able to get them later. So.
Yeah, and to be blunt, like, we want businesses to profit off of it. For some reason, we villainize profit sometimes. This is a place where we want businesses to see the value in people's connection to Troutdale and then go out and try to cultivate that connection. You know, again, just any kind of things that you think might make sense. Hoodies are super popular right now. So, like, going out, making the resources available to your business community, allow the knowledge that they have for their customer base to drive the products that they create. And then finally, we always like to take a look at the advertising and how to tell the message. We created a series of several different templates to help kind of tell the story. You can see with all of these, we always like to focus in on a singular, dynamic photo where you can really kind of focus your attention. A lot of times communities overdo it because I think they're convinced that they're only going to have one shot or run an ad. So they put any photo that might have ever been deemed good since 1985 in the ad. So you have like 70 different photos that are this high and everybody's got shoulder pads and tall hair. So you can see you've got a couple different components going on. You've got a frame that holds it all together. You've got some artwork that kind of ties back in. That artwork can evolve, so your template system can kind of change as you go. You've got place for different photos. You've got place for different look and feel, different color tones. With each of these, the headlines will change, and I'm actually going to have Trip talk about that in just a second because he really went above and beyond and kind of crafted two completely different campaigns that I'd love for him to talk in detail, but I wanted to show you some of the visuals first. Again, seeing how all that stuff kind of connects and how easy it is to use the tools. Again, showing you more variations there with your template design. And then finally, I created one that was really, really bold, but again, as I went through the community, the sculptures, if the sculptures don't impact you, then you might need to check your pulse. Like, they're obvious, they're visual, and they kind of scream that this is an artistic community. So what I actually did was I took a silhouette of one of your signature sculptures and then literally just dropped that photo imagery behind it. So you start to take that visual sign and use it to connect to your outdoors, connecting urban to nature and you know, shaped by our setting. But Trip, I'd love for you to talk about these two.
Yeah, so what I did basically was take the brand statement, and there's two kind of sets of sentence structure that we're using. The first one is mimicking the tagline, "Our nature will move you," so we call it the Cadence series. And it just gives you a chance to, one of the things we're grappling with was, you know, we want a variety of ways to describe things in different campaigns and to message. So our nature will move you. Well, then you get our sculpture will inspire you, our art will stir you, our warmth will welcome you, our history will transport you, our river will. This is, you know, you all can have fun and keep going until the, you know, day is long. But this whole idea of following the cadence of that tagline and creating a consistent messaging structure there as well. And then the next one we envisioned was what we call the value series. And that's the one that follows the 5 values that are identified in the brand statement. So rooted, shaped, connected, transported, and grounded. And so using those 5 words, and it gives a chance to go either way and enough flexibility in messaging to be able to have a language of conversation about what the community is about. So using the 5 value words and then using the cadence gives you some options between those.
And then I think from here, just to kind of wrap up, is it's all great to see the imagery, but then what do you do with it? So what we've actually created for you all is we've created a 3-phase implementation plan. There is no fixed order. Every community is different. Their access to resources is different, but What this does is it literally gets all the different things that you have to think about with brand rollout all on one page and all prioritized in a way where you can figure out how to tackle it. The second thing that we've done is we've created a how to be a brand partner sheet. This is intended for our business communities, our organizational partners, and our event organizers. And literally all it does is gives creative ideas of how those folks might be able to take advantage of the brand elements. And then the final piece, as we move towards the creation of that Main Street-based organization, we've even given them a brand score sheet. We have one of these for Main Street organizations. We also have a different one for cities that allow the organizations to self-score their own implementation and be able to identify low-hanging fruit and be able to prioritize where they should go from there in terms of the rollout and being able to take advantage of the resources they have.
So we are at 1 hour. These pieces at the end are what I'll be working with you on when I'm back here in February. When I'm back here in February is based on what's about to happen here. We want to hear your